I'm McKinley Corbley, and you're listening to the ProPTN Podcast, an interview talk show for piano technicians to tune in to what the pros are talking about from across the industry. If you enjoyed today's episode, show us some love by following us on your podcasting platform and leaving us a review. To learn more about us here at the Professional Piano Technicians Network, visit us at proptn.org. Hello, and welcome to another installment of the ProPTN Podcast. I'm your host, McKinley, and today I am thrilled to be joined by my friend Tzung-Shin Wu, a Taiwanese piano technician who has worked as a translator, international representative, and advocate for the piano technician communities of Asia. Shin, welcome to the show.
Hey, McKinney. Hello, everyone. It's such an honor to be in this show.
I'm so glad to hear it. Can you start us off by telling us about your career, how you got started in piano technology, and where it has taken you over the years?
I've been really passionate in music since my childhood. I listen to music every day, and when I woke up and when I rode a bicycle to the school, or whenever I went to bed, I'll listen to music with the old vintage cassette player. And somehow it just comes to my heart, comes to my mind. And when I listen to music, it brought me to a state of mind to connect with nature or to the environment. I'm just calm. And when I was like a teenager, I have so many questions in my life. But one question always came into my mind. And the question is, what I'm gonna do with my love in music, what I'm gonna do in the future. And I didn't get an answer until 16 years later. So basically when I turned 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have any other musicians in your life around you?
Not really. I grew up in a really small village. The county I grew up with was basically an agriculture county. So you don't really see any music industry or music scene.
Do you remember some of the earliest cassettes you would have had, or maybe your first cassette?
Oh, a lot, yeah. Like a vintage cartoon theme, like a billboard, like a top 10, that kind of stuff. And then you start to broaden your taste, like a folk, and then oldie, and then some European songs, some American songs.
Yeah. All right, so 16
years later, when I turned 31, and I found that there's one thing called piano technology, and there's a job called piano technician.
How'd you first hear about it?
The last place I worked was in a musical instrument store. And in that store, all my colleagues were piano technicians. So just by watching them tune in, doing all the regulation day by day, I'm inspired. To me, it's a really old craft, a really unique craft. And there is music and emotion in the key sticks. So I said to myself, why not just give a shot? I have worked on different jobs. I didn't really like those jobs. And I just want to find something I love. I just want to do it, do the right thing in my life.
Yeah. What were some of the jobs that you worked before that? You said you worked in a musical instrument store, but I can't imagine that you were doing that the whole time.
I was working in a recording studio as a publishing licensing person.
What? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, if the artist finished recording or the mixing, mastering, then I have to take care about the license, all the copyright, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
It's cool to see, the singers and the bands every day. It's different. I would say it's really different from being a piano technician.
Okay, so you were working in the studio and it wasn't right for you, so you got into piano technology. Where did it take you from there?
Yeah, so at that time, I made up my mind. I want to do this, but I don't know where to start. So basically, I knocked most of the piano shops and manufacturers and dealership in Taiwan, but I got no chances at all.
Nobody to train you, or they just weren't looking for extra apprentices or workers or anything?
No, not really. Because during that time, probably 2010, 2011, 2 or 3 years after the Wall Street crisis, like a market crisis, economy wasn't really good. So there were not a lot of jobs or openings. So I just went back to my home. I said to my mom, I didn't have any chance, but I really want to do it. So this is my last chance in my life. I want to do something. So I started Googling schools I found out there were some schools in Europe and there are some schools in the United States. And in the end, I chose North Benedictine School in Massachusetts, America. I really love that school. It kind of changed my life.
Did you do the 2-year program or just the one?
I did too, but I was enrolled in different year. So from 15 to 16, I went there for the first year. And then I went back to Taiwan working as a photo technician and tried to save as much money as possible. Then in 21, I went back to finish the second year.
So what kind of pianos do you typically service in Taiwan, and what kind of fieldwork issues do you run into in that part of the world?
Most pianos I encounter are Yamaha and Kawai, and sometimes I saw other brands such as Yongchen, Semic, Bluesner, Bosendorfer, Fazioli, Baldwin, but it's rare.
Okay, so you mainly got the 2 big Japanese brands, and then everything else is kind of a special occasion.
Yeah. And I don't really see any spinets and consoles in my country.
Oh, you lucky. You lucky.
I'm lucky every day. I talk to technician, especially like American technician. They have a bunch of spinets and console to deal with. You have to figure out how to take all the actions out. In my career, there were only 2 spinets.
Wow.
Bowen.
Oh my God.
Right.
Okay, so you lucked out with the spinets, but how bad is the climate? Do you guys have really high humidity, crazy pests or animals or anything like that?
Yeah. Taiwan is considered like a subtropical island country. So we have monsoon and typhoon hitting us on different seasons. So as a technician, I saw a lot of rusty center pins. A lot of clients, they would complain like constantly about why my keys didn't return.
See, we don't get any rusted center pins in Virginia, so that's really interesting to me.
Yeah, so we don't really see any like a really loose key stick or that kind of stuff. But instead, we encounter a lot of friction in the action part. And also their corroded key lead is so common. I have to replace a lot of corroded key lead.
How frequently do you feel like you have to fix that?
A lot.
See, that's another rare issue for me. I feel like I never have to address that in the field at all.
Even we put all the dehumidifiers inside the piano, it didn't really help because it's just too humid.
It doesn't help.
No, Taiwan's average humidity is 82% up.
Oh my God.
And then all the pianos, they turned out to be a perfect living environment for insects. I saw geckos, termites, and different species of cockroaches. Right, so in my tool bag, I have so many pairs of gloves, a vacuum, and masks.
Right.
So all we're trying to do in Taiwan is to rebalance the ecosystem inside the piano.
You're fending off the jungle that's trying to make its way inside the piano.
Yeah.
Well, what does an average day look like for you?
Usually when I wake up, I'll try to have a good breakfast.
Okay.
And then I usually prefer turning the piano in the morning and do my regulation and repairs and other rebuilding job in the afternoon. Usually I will leave 1 or 2 days per week to translate manuals or like any interesting information on the internet. Also, I will help my colleagues order parts and tools. So this takes a lot of time.
Are you mostly translating English manuals to Mandarin?
Yes.
That does sound very time-consuming.
Yes.
You know, I've always been interested in how piano-related vocabulary changes between languages. What are some of the differences or similarities, if any, that you've noticed between English tech vocabulary versus Mandarin?
There are a lot of differences. And from my observation, piano technology is something to do with like sociology and linguistics. Because when Japan introduced the craft to Taiwan like 70, 80 years ago, it also brought a lot of words from Europe and United States of America. And since we got a lot of influences from Japan, we share a lot of common terminology with Japan. So, for example, if a Japanese technician, they said hammer, right? Like in America, we call it hammer. But in Japan, they call it hamba. So we share a lot of like same vocabulary with exactly the same pronunciation. Another example is action. In Japan, they pronounce it like action. In Taiwan, it's the same pronunciation. We call it action. Then on the other side, if you talk about the differences, when you say let off in America, technicians, they will understand what it is. But in Taiwan, we call it to close. That something is really close. It's like a verb, like to close something.
Ah, that's fun.
Right. But you get an idea, like, okay, you're talking about, like, you're trying to be really close to something in order to make it happen. Right. And Europe, they call it set off.
Ah, okay. I'm sensing the pattern here. Okay. That must make your translating the manuals a little bit easier, at least.
Right. When I look at the terminology manual, I always try to look at if there's a pattern or there's like a cultural influence behind that. It's always interesting. Also, another big difference is the voicing. In America, people call it voicing. In Japan and Taiwan, we call it tone regulation.
Ah, I love that consistency.
Right. And in Europe, they use the term intonation.
Wow. Okay. I love all of these differences and similarities. That makes me wonder, what are some of the largest cultural and professional differences that you've noticed between the Asian tech communities versus the European and American, if you've noticed any at all?
The biggest cultural differences I noticed are in America or Europe. If you hang out with a technician 70 or 80 years old, you're more like a friend. But in Asia, they're like fully respectful to senior people. We have that kind of relationship between seniors and juniors because a lot of Asian countries, we adopted Confucianism. You don't want to talk too casual to them. You have to be really careful.
So at these conventions where everyone's mingling and hanging out, it's probably better to reserve as much respect as possible for the older generation of Asian technicians so as to avoid disrespect.
Yes.
All right, good to know. Hi there, this is McKinley from the editing room, here to remind you that if you have not already signed up for a ProPTN subscription, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need articles from our Beginner's Corner to help supplement your students' education, or if you're a seasoned tech who wants a refresher on certain specialty skills, ProPTN has got you covered with peer-reviewed editorial content, video demonstrations, and photographed step-by-step instructionals. On top of that, the collection is our online marketplace that is a must for maintaining your tool collection. If you want to try a tuning lever before you buy it, you can check out our Rent-A-Lever program. If you make and design your own tools, you can sign up to distribute them through the collection. If you're a retiring technician, we can sell your tool collection on consignment, or you can just go shopping for a whole selection of new and used tools from brands and technicians you trust. So if you don't have a subscription, sign up now and you'll thank me later. But for now, back to the show.
Asian technicians, we tend to do things like in standard ways. So we follow like number steps provided from manufacturers. And while technicians in America or in Europe, they'll just run through everything to the end and they'll look back and they'll try to decide what's the most ideal aftertouch and then go from there. And the mindset is really different. And basically, we're shooting the same results, finding the best touch for our client. But the way we start is so different. And I wonder if that's because the way we're educated, like our education system is different. Or are there any reason? I thought of this a lot.
Out of curiosity, do you guys use the phrase circle of refinement in Asia very frequently?
No, I haven't heard of that in my life. I mean, in Asia.
Okay.
Yeah, before I went to the United States, I never heard of this phrase in my life.
Okay, so then I guess that's a strictly American phrase that we use to do the total opposite. Like, we start by doing several rough passes, whether it's on the tuning or regulation or
Yeah,
voicing, and we just keep doing passes until we get as close to perfection as we can.
right.
But with that covering the cultural differences, what about the professional differences?
There are so many professional differences, and I'll just name a few. For example, piano technician types. Like in United States, you have the position, the job, college and university technicians. But in Asia, we don't have that many this kind of position. I mean barely, because the schools and conservatories, college, they don't wanna hire technicians as a full-time employee. They want to lower their costs.
So then those pianos must really be hurting the rest of the year then, huh?
Usually, it usually is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also we don't have resident technicians for music festivals. If you go to Europe, you go to United States of America, and you see a main technician taking care of a bunch of internship technicians, and all those people in charge of a festival's fleet of pianos. It doesn't really happen in Asia.
Right.
They'll just
Right.
get a contract technician.
So then what happens to some of the large scale maintenance that needs to be done on the pianos, like rebushing keys or repinning? I mean, do they just kind of let that fall by the wayside?
Some symphony halls just get a technician to evaluate the pianos or like a recondition like every few years. But I would say usually the pianos they need more work than that
Yeah. Yeah.
on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And also like the balance of the field is really different from USA and Europe. In Asia, all the dealership and manufacturers and also the technicians, they want to become like a concert technician. And I think rebuilding is not in their mind.
Yeah.
Right. And when I look at it, I wonder why. And I think it's because piano technology came so late in Asia. So if we're exposed to piano so late, then the knowledge or the way we do things for a really aged piano will be postponed too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And another big professional difference is the dealership.
Right.
If you want to work with dealership, you need to become a full-time employee for them. You cannot just say, hey, I want to work for your brand, right? And then you said, may I be in your list, like a piano technician list? And they're not gonna call you. And usually they have the power to control the rate. And dealership, they want the highest numbers of clientele. So they always offer the lowest rate for clients.
I see. So then it sounds like a lot of dealership technician relationships might not be fairly arranged.
Right, right.
Right. Right.
They also control the parts availability. So let's say if I need a part and I make a phone call to them, they won't give it to you because you don't work for them.
That's tough.
That's tough. So a lot of time I'll get a phone call from my other technician in Taiwan and say I wanted this part, and I say okay, I'll just buy the things in international website instead of buying things in Taiwan or Asia because there's no way you can get that.
But then the cost of shipping must be
Right,
so expensive.
right. It's gonna cost you more and the time, and also it's not really eco-friendly. But it's like it's tough. It's tough for us.
Yeah, no kidding. As far as professional differences go, I also heard that there is a price difference in tuning uprights versus grands.
Right. In Asia, we charge differently on grand pianos and upright pianos. And I always wonder why. because we spend the same time, right?
Yeah.
And for grand pianos, actually we can sit down.
Wait, so which one is more expensive?
Grand piano.
That's crazy because I hate tuning uprights. So if I could, I would just tune grands all day.
Right,
I would
yeah,
charge
yeah,
more for the uprights.
right, me too. But it's a joke. It's like I met technicians who's been in the field for 50, 60 years. And I asked them why there's a difference. And their answers are because grants is more expensive and upright is cheaper. So I said, but the time we spend is the same, right? But there must be a reason for that. And I would say probably the dealership right in the beginning, like 70 or 80 years ago in Taiwan, they just preset everything. Or maybe from Japan, they just preset everything.
Well, can you tell us about the advocacy work that you've been doing to connect Taiwanese technicians with their American and European peers at international conventions?
Of course, for all those years, I've been trying to build and maintain relationships with organizations around the world, such as IAPBT. It's an international one, and there's a smaller one which is ABTA, Asian Piano Technician Association, and there's a Euro Piano, the European one. So in those international conventions, I also try to preserve and update the nomenclature of traditional Chinese characters in Taiwanese because most people they don't know the differences between the simplified one and the traditional one.
Right.
Right. So I think Taiwan and probably Hong Kong are the last two countries adopting traditional one. I mean, as a Taiwanese technician, that's really important to me because I believe the characters and language they carry a one's culture and stories. So if we lose all the characters in our industry, we kind of lose all the traits, like all the stories of those people working there for such a long time that we lost all the stories. Also, I've been trying to introduce other exams to Taiwan for better objective evaluation for technicians
Yeah.
and to bring more diversified perspectives. Because in Taiwan, we don't have national exams and we don't have any schools, we don't have any manufacturing plants anymore. So let's say if you're alone and you want to know how you're doing, like the skill you got and how far you can go, but you got no one to talk to
Yeah.
and you got no other ways to assess your ability.
I hear that there's been a really dramatic drop in piano sales in China,
Mm-hmm.
so that a lot of the factories are really struggling to
Right.
pay employees. And how has Taiwan been affected by that?
We have a lot of old technicians. Like 30 years ago, they would just go to China to take advantage of the time. And back then, Taiwan is considered has a better skill. So they would just go
Yeah.
there, open the piano business. And because the China economy is going down, those old Taiwanese tech, they all came back to Taiwan. So in Taiwan, I would say the business is not good either, but probably not as bad as what China is right now.
Yeah. I am also curious. You said Taiwanese technicians were typically more talented 30 years ago. Is that the case now?
I think it's still the case because we're exposed to Japan's dealership or to the Japan Kawaii technicians, and that's the only reason.
Gotcha.
We are closer to Japan back then, like 50, 80 years ago, and that's why we can be exposed to those skill set.
Yeah.
Yeah. They send their students abroad to be in every industry, every field. So, I mean, they have really smart people and they have a lot of money. But I think in the end, it's not about money or skill. It's about who you are, what you do.
Well said. Well
Yeah.
said. As far as your international work goes, do you feel like you've been met with a lot of cooperation and enthusiasm from international peers, or has it been a struggle?
I think both like European and association in the United States of America, both sides are being really friendly to me so far. And I think people just appreciate not the people who have the same enthusiasm. If you look at these people, he want to know something to give back to the society or the industry. Why not helping out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
My mindset is always simple. It's like I want to learn something, and I just contact you. And if there's a chance, it's great. If there's no chance, it's okay. I'll just wait.
You're a really good sport then, yeah.
Right. And sometimes if I got question on European manufacturers or any spec, I'll just write an email to European Association or just write email to any association within the European countries or just write to their manufacturer. And most of the time they will just respond really quickly.
Good.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
send in USA, like I got so many good friends, Venetian friends in United States of America, and you people are like just so great and so friendly to me.
I'm really glad to hear that. Good, good, good.
Yeah, that's why I love going to international conventions.
Well, with how much advocacy work that you do going to other conventions, I mean, the amount of money that you must spend on travel must be enormous.
Right. Can you ask like again? Like
I
what
was
kind of
just, I was saying that with how much you travel to conventions,
right?
the amount of money that you have to spend in order to go there and bring all that experience back to
Right.
Taiwan must be very large.
Yeah, I always tell this to all my Tunisian friends. I said, you cannot just borrow money from me because I got nothing. Because every year, I'll just save my money from servicing, and then I'll just pre-book the flights for the next convention, the lunch, like the hotel and everything. And I spend all the money on it because I want to learn something. And I do it for many reasons, but because I'm so passionate on this industry, and I saw there's a crisis in Taiwanese industry. So I don't know, I feel like there's a responsibility for myself to be the guy to do this kind of work. So if no one goes abroad to bring back all this knowledge, then who's gonna do it?
Yeah,
It's gonna fall, it's gonna collapse.
right. So, one question that I keep trying to ask people is what is your favorite thing that you have learned recently? Like in the last couple months, what is something you learned that was so exciting or so interesting that you.
You mean skill wise or
Yeah,
skill?
yeah, with pianos, any corner of the industry, but what's your favorite thing that you've learned about?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Thanks.
That's a really good question. Let me think. From technical side, there are so many subgenres that always surprise me.
Yeah.
For example, like every time when I look at menu from David Steinway's Touchway, I'm so surprised that
Yeah.
there are so many details, how much you can control for the touch. Or when I look at Dan Everton's Craft of Piano, kind of like refresh myself with the theory of tuning, the partial series, and all kinds of like different ratio, octave stretch ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for my personal service side, I think probably I need to balance myself more from my family and the work side
Oh, yeah.
because I think I spend a lot of time taking care of clients and
Yeah. We're always learning how to better balance work and life. It's
right,
constant. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Because you're just asking me about the cost, right? Because I do this every year that I went abroad to learn something
Yeah.
new and to
Yeah.
hang out with people from other world. And it's like I always try to balance this situation, but there's part of me in my heart that is saying that you just need to go out to learn. Otherwise, you cannot just stay in a comfort zone.
Yeah.
You're not gonna be improved by staying in your place, right? You have
Yeah.
to go out and see and explore.
That's very healthy and very wise. So then, what are some of the biggest challenges facing technicians in that area, and how are they overcoming those challenges? Can you tell us about how you believe these issues and solutions could be improved?
Market downsizing so fast, I think this is one of the biggest challenges we face right now. And if you look at all the developed countries like South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, we all have the same problem. Is that our market shrinks so soon that we couldn't even respond. And if you look at like an index or the numbers, I think South Korea and Taiwan has been the top three of the lowest birth rate like in the whole world for a few years. And also like nowadays, a lot of people they have diverse hobbies, so they don't necessarily have to donate their time in pianos or
Yeah.
music. And the solutions for that is that I think during the COVID or after COVID, there are more and more technicians, including a lot of my friends, they started purchasing advertisement on the internet and trying to broaden their clientele
Yeah.
and buying all the keyword searching, all this kind of big data stuff.
Yeah.
I think that kind of helps for short term.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like in order for there to be improvement, there would have to be a lot more of a cultural shift in general.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And also like there are challenges such as like a lack of training opportunities. So a lot of technicians like I have talked to in Asia, they always mention one thing is that my country doesn't have associations or my country doesn't offer any training. Then you have to work for dealership. Otherwise you cannot just go for training. You cannot just sign up to main manufacturer in Japan. And to them, it's kind of sad. And I mean, Taiwan, we have the situation. So I always encourage them just go abroad and go to any conventions, any workshop. Then you can sign up for any skill set you want. Write an email to any people you know that they're really good at a particular thing.
So, what are some of the ways that you've seen the international industry change for the better over the years? Conversely, what are some ways you may have seen it change for the worst?
I have seen over the years that manufacturers or the independent technicians in the international industry, they become more open-minded in new knowledge. And for the worst part, I think some international manufacturer, it's not really transparent. If you look at their supply chain, they're not necessarily buy things from a really ethical company producing a really sustainable part. And if you look at the world right now, I think we're really in need of everything that's green
Yeah.
or more eco.
I recently heard somebody talking about bamboo hammer shanks
Right,
and bamboo being used for ribs on the soundboard and how it
right,
works
right,
fantastically and it's really sustainable.
right,
And so I keep wanting to hear more about that or see more
right.
of it. But
Yeah, that's a good thing. But it's like I wonder if manufacturer will adapt that because that's a
yeah,
supplier, and if the big company can adapt that, then that can be mainstreamed. That can be
yeah.
a main thing we use.
Yeah. I see a lot more sustainable practices used by higher end piano companies, especially based out of Europe, because Europe is already so sustainability focused and so eco friendly. The factories are solar powered, but
Right,
they
right,
also are only making, a couple hundred
right.
pianos a year. So you think about the larger companies and it's a much bigger issue.
Right, right, right. They have
Yeah.
certain rules, and they're really good at energy saving. There's another change, the polarization of brands that you see nowadays. The big company, they just got bigger and bigger. And the middle-sized company, they kind of downsize. And the big company, they sponsor musicians and they would just spend a lot of money on propaganda advertisement.
Right.
So I know it's a business, it's a market thing. You have to make money to make your company survive. On the other hand,
I noticed that you said propaganda and advertising as the same thing. I feel like I only ever hear people say propaganda when referring to something political
oh right,
rather than advertising. But
right,
advertising really is propaganda.
right, yeah, right. It's
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
propaganda, a business propaganda, not political propaganda.
Yeah. But when it comes to sustainability or transparency of supply chain issues or
Right. The normal clients, the people, they're so used to all the advertisement. So they'll just subconsciously think that's a really good brand, that's a really good piano.
yeah.
Because good pianists play those pianos. Happens in every field, right? Car
Yeah.
business
Yeah.
or sports. I got it, but I feel like people will pick on me because I answer all these questions.
No, I'm right there with you.
Oh, okay.
What are some other tangible ways that the industry can help with the shortage of resources and education in lesser served communities overseas? Are there already systems in place that businesses or individuals in the West can participate in?
I'm convinced that online workshops would be one of the tangible ways. You don't need to fly such a far away to be there. You can just Zoom.
What are your top three classes on your wish list if you could have any three classes taught online to the Taiwanese community?
For the Taiwanese community or for
Yeah,
myself?
either.
Either. Um, I think the first one, which I have already gone to, the first one would be I really highly recommend the touch rate class from David Stengwood. I think that kind of benefit technicians' perspective on how to manipulate the action ratio, the hammer weight, and the front weight, the key thing. It kind of like a game changer in the industry. The second class, I think it's rare, but I would say if there's any like soundboard or bridge class, because it's like from manufacturing perspective, they're doing everything brand new. But from rebuilding perspective, you're kind of like trying to balance the best situation for this old piano. There are so many really good rebuilders in United States of America. They come out with all the like crazy ideas and it really works, and I don't know, it's like genius.
Yeah.
In the third class, I would say probably, oh, there are so many classes I want to recommend people to take it, but I would say the rescaling. Scaling is also like, to me, the mystery. The puzzle left is the touch weight and the rescaling. And because there's so many software to use right now, you can download anyone and just try to measure all the speaking length and try to manipulate the length of the string or the bridge pin, that kind of stuff. And it will make everything so even, all the inharmonicity, all the loudness, all the hammer contact time, all this kind of like hidden factor that
Yeah.
people don't really know. If you want to explain this to your clients, their head will just blow away.
But the funny thing is there's this phenomenon that you probably don't get very frequently in Taiwan, but there's something that happens where you go into a client's house and you're getting ready to tune the piano, and the client says, "Oh, I spent all this money on paying to rebuild grandma's piano, and they did such a great job, and I love it so
Hmm.
much." And you open it up, and it's a monster, like a Frankenstein monster. It's, and then you kind of have to dance around the issue and not you don't want to tell them that they paid all this money to have their piano rebuilt only to have them do a bad job. I feel like you only ever hear about good rebuilding work being done and not the bad type, but I'm so cautious about encouraging people to consider trying it because unless you know what you're doing, there's just 1.5 million things that can go wrong. And the consequences of doing a bad job when someone's paid you thousands of dollars to do something, there can be some really serious consequences.
Right. Yeah, that's something that's not easy to understand or to evaluate. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that from my observation, I think the technician in USA is very good at rebuilding. And I don't think there are that many rebuilders in Europe. There are some factories, really good factories, but not as many as the United States of America.
I was going to say maybe it's just because we have that pioneer mentality.
I think so. I think if the country has more piano brands and it kind of brings creativity. So if you look at all the numbers before World War II in the United States, you see, wow, how many
Yeah.
manufacturers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe that like USA is really good on rebuilding and action geometry, all that kind of stuff. Because you have so many different kind of piano that you need to work on. So naturally, you will have that ability. You try to make everything work. Then you have to understand all the science behind that. And Europe is really good on woodworking and piano designing. It's also on their curriculum, right? That you have to use software to just draw your 3D model. I think also that the difference also came from like the education side.
Well said. Well, we are nearing the end of this wonderful interview, but before I get to my favorite question, as I understand it, you also volunteer for a number of nonprofits in Taiwan. Would you like to go ahead and give them a shout out while you're on the air and tell our listeners a little bit about them?
I would like to give my shout out to two people. The first one is a band leader called Miss Wu. She's a leader of an orchestra named Angels of Broken Wings, and it consists of children of disabilities, especially children with intellectual or visual abilities or like DNA abnormality. She's been doing this for decades. So working with them as a volunteer piano technician, I feel like she always said I help them so much. I feel like she's saving my life because I got to see those children and the orchestra with so many values, and it kind of balanced my life. And along my journey, I would say the most satisfied thing I have done. And the second people I wanna give a shout out is Paul Barton. And he's the UK pianist who lives in Thailand right now. He also spent decades playing repertoire music piece to elephant world. And that's a shelter full of elephants who got abused or their legs are broken or their body are scratched or they missed the eye, all this kind of stuff. And as a person and a technician, I always feel like I want to do more. I want to do more than tuning. I want to do something for the society. And I found Paul Barton. I mean, he's amazing. And everything he did, I don't know, made me cry.
Oh,
And I found him on a newspaper and I just sent in an email saying I want to help. And that's it. That's how the story began. Yeah, thank you, Misu, and thank you, Paul Barton.
that's beautiful. I have to ask about the elephant sanctuary. How frequently do you travel over there to tune for? I assume you're tuning a piano for him to play
Right,
for the elephants?
right. It's about once a year.
Do the elephants seem to like the music?
They love the music,
Oh my
and,
gosh.
and I asked Paul which elephants will respond to music more than others, and he said usually the elephants who responded more are the male elephants. especially the male elephants who has a really strong territory, really fierce, right? Because they have different personality.
Right.
And the most fierce elephants, they will respond to music more.
Wow.
So that's kind of interesting.
That's really interesting. Okay, well, listeners, I'm going to drop a link for that in the show notes for everybody to listen at home. That's really something. Thank you for sharing that with us.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure.
Well, all good things must come to an end, but before we finish, my final question is, can you tell us your favorite part of piano technology and your favorite tool?
And this field, this craft, is so traditional, but it's also really inspirational. And to my soul, it's so pure, but to my life, it's so colorful. And I believe it's a way for me to connect myself with the society and this world. Also, it's a way to look at myself, to introspect myself. And I got to meet so different people with different background, with so many different values from different part of the world. That's how I feel about this craft. And three tools I like. The first one will be Mauro Igrek's book, Pianos Inside Out.
Yes.
It's not a tool, but it's considered
Nah,
a tool.
that's
That's a must-have. That's a must-have. Mario is such a good guy, and I respect him a lot. He's a really cool dude. Yeah. So that book I highly recommend. The second is the Touchweight Jig by David Stanwood.
Okay.
It's a table and with different other stuff. You can measure the weight of the shank hammer or the ratio.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen one. I've never actually used one.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really fun.
Okay.
Yeah. The third tool I recommend is Dan Leviton's classic lever. I really love that lever. Well balanced and well made. Just like the guy, Dan. Yeah, I love him so much.
It's a classic for a reason. Yeah.
Right. And if you have all these three tools, then it'll be easier to work as a technician. Yeah.
What kind of tuning lever do you see most commonly around Taiwan? Is it the Levitan? Or that style of tuning lever?
No, people don't really know what that is.
Oh.
Because there's no importer, right? And
Right.
international convention won't be held in Taiwan. Or even like in South Korea or Japan, you don't see this kind of stuff. In Taiwan, the most common tuning lever is like an old style Watanabe,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
a plastic one, because almost all Asian countries buy things from Watanabe or Itoshin.
I see.
Right.
Gotcha.
And there's a new lever supplier in Japan right now. But if you want to buy like the failed clothes, all the kind of stuff, right? And so you go to like Watanabe. So they only sell the old style. I mean, they have the Dan Everton right now, but it's like recently.
So you've been the only one wielding a Levitan in Taiwan?
Yeah, only one or only two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Shin, thank you so much for joining us. You've been a wonderful guest. We'll see you at the next convention.
I hope so. Are you gonna be there?
You bet.
Okay. Thank you so much, McKinney, and thank you everyone for your time listening.
If you want to reach out to Shin and further discuss education or staying inspired and grounded in a fast-paced world, you can visit his website at shinpianos.com, or you can find him on Facebook under Wu Tzung-Shin. You can also find the YouTube channels for Angels with Broken Wings and Paul Barton's piano work in the show notes for this episode. But until the next podcast installment, remember to stay groovy, listeners.